I'm not sure how the weather is over at your side. It's rainy here and very dreary, but it is a perfect time for a nice hot cup of coffee, some tea, or a glass of water, and a little bit of knowledge about Tableau. Like I said again, we'll just wait a few more minutes so that everybody can join, but then we will join, we will start on time because we only have a short amount of time available to us. Welcome, Jyoti. We'll wait a few minutes just so that everybody can join who needs to join. Just give them a little bit of time in case they are running late. We'll wait one more minute so that everybody can join that wants to join. And I think we should just get started because if people really wanted to join and it's only 15 minutes, they would have been here. So welcome everybody to today's session of A Cup of Tableau. Just a nice session, 15 minutes, maybe a little bit shorter depending on how fast we go through the subject. Just an afternoon break where you can just enjoy a beverage and some knowledge about Tableau. Just to remind you, uh, uh, like last time, where we will record this session and feel free to use the Q&A or chat to ask any questions during the session. Today we will do a little bit of a short dive on calculated fields and when things happen within your calculated fields. And we're actually particularly going to look at what's the difference between using an aggregation within our calculated field or if we do not use an aggregation in our field, and how does that relate to what happens in Tableau? So once more, we are recording this session, but do feel free to use the chat and Q&A for any questions that you might have, particularly during any explanation that we're doing. So today, what I want to talk about, like I said, is the difference between using aggregation in your calculation or not using an aggregation in your calculated field. So the difference between using a sum of profit divided by the sum of sales or just using profit divided by sales. What difference does that make? And why should we actually care about this difference? And then later on, we'll use and look at the difference between profit bigger than zero. This is a shortened version of a logic statement. If the sum of profit is bigger than zero, then this is a shortened version of that that you could also use creating a boolean at the end. So a one or a zero, a true or false statement. And on the right hand side, we have the exact same type of statement, but without using that sum. And what is the difference? Now, I'm going to highlight that first part because at the beginning, interval, we're going to look at this difference between the sum of profit divided by the sum of sales and profit divided by sales. Usually what we call the profit ratio. So how much profit am I making compared to the amount of sales that I'm doing? I've already created some fields in Tableau, as you may imagine. So I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can more easily see this. As you can see, I've created multiple different fields, but most dominantly I've used profit ratio with an aggregation in the field. So I'll just open that up real quick just to show you that indeed there is an aggregation happening in that field. And I just have to move the participant panel. There we go. I'll make it a little bit. As you can see, this is the sum of profits divided by the sum of sales. And then I have the same field, but I called it no aggregation in the field. So that's profit ratio with no aggregation in the field. And then I'm doing profit divided by sales. Now I've used both of them in the visualization where we have the profit with aggregation on the left-hand side and the profit ratio without any aggregation on the right-hand side. Both of the fields are shown as percentages, but as you may notice, the percentages that we're showing on the left-hand side where we are aggregating into the field, so we're using sum of profit divided by the sum of sales, those profit ratios seem a little bit more, as we would say, what we can expect in real life as compared to profit ratio divided, the profit divided by sales without any sum. We have 16,911% profit ratio. Well, if we ever have that type of profit ratio, that means we really need to do and only sell ever this particular product. Now, something that you may notice on the top corners, we have the fields that we are using a aggregation in the field itself. It says AGG, and noting that there is an aggregation already happening in the field, and Tableau will not aggregate any further. And on the right-hand side, we have that profit ratio without any aggregation in the field itself, profit divided by sales, and Tableau is summing that particular field, already giving you a hint where it is going wrong. Just going to pop that down. If we are using sum profit divided by the sum of sales, what we're actually telling Tableau is I want you to already sum the amount of profit and the amount of sales before we divide one and the other. If we're just saying profit divided by sales, actually what we're doing is we're doing that particular calculation in the field on the row level. So it's a level of the rows of our data set. So every row will use this particular calculation. What will the formula look like in the end? If we are using sum profit divided by sum of sales, we're actually first summing up the profits at the level of detail in our visualization. Let's pretend we only have two rows of data. We'll do 3 plus 8 equals to 11, 2 plus 10, 12, and then we do 11 divided by 12. We get 0.92. Now that makes sense. That seems like a good way of doing an aggregation in this case when we're looking at percentages. Now let's have a look at profit divided by sales. If we just do it at the row level, so we're getting an actually that particular formula for each row of data, we first have 3 divided by 2, and then 8 divided by 10. And then we're actually aggregating that outcome once more, just to show you that in Tableau. As you can see, it says here sum. So once more, we're aggregating those total results and we get 2.3. Well, when we're talking about percentages and calculating with those percentages, you'd rather have that sum profit divided by the sum of sales instead of doing profit divided by sales at the row level. So that's a very big difference when we're using an aggregation, min, max, average, any type of aggregation, and you're doing that into the calculated field already. It will be at the level of the detail of the visualization. So therefore, in this case, for profit ratios, we would go for the left-hand side, the sum of profit divided by the sum of sales, because profit divided by sales would give us the wrong result in this particular case. Now you might think, why do we even do calculations at the row level? When would that be useful? Well, we can also use logic. For instance, look at the sum of profit. If the sum of profit is bigger than zero, or if profit is bigger than zero. Now let's have a quick look in Tableau how that looks like. Make this a little bit bigger so you can actually see this a little bit easier. Now I've created a visualization, or I've used the sum of sales for both of the bars. Both of the bars show the exact same amount of sales for category and subcategory. As per usual, I'm using sample superstore, by the way, for any data references that you might want to rebuild yourself. Just use sample superstore. Now I'm using logic where I'm aggregating into the field. So I'll right click, edit just to show you. And it is indeed sum of profit bigger than zero, giving me that nice Boolean value. As you can see, because we're already aggregating in the field itself, Tableau is looking at the complete sum of profit for a particular bar and looks, is that complete bar, does that have a profit which is bigger or smaller than zero? I'll show you quickly that profit that we have. I'll just use profit on the tooltip. And as you can see, if I'm hovering over a red bar or an orange bar, it has a profit of minus 100, minus 1000, and the blue bars all have positive profits. Now we have on the right-hand side, we have another way of coloring. How do I color? I'm using that the same type of logic, but then I'm not aggregating in the field. Just edit that real quick. As you can see, there's no aggregation happening in the field. It's profit bigger than zero. And on the right-hand side, every bar, as you can see, all the bars have blue colors, and some of the parts of the bar have orange colors. What is actually happening? We're doing again that calculation that we're doing, that logic that we're using. We're doing that at the row level. How does that look like? If we're looking at the aggregation, we're actually looking, is the sum of profit bigger than zero? So in our use case, again, our simplified case, 3 plus 8, is that bigger than zero? Yes or no? So I'm getting a yes or no answer for the entire data set, sum of profit bigger than zero. If we're not using an aggregation on the right-hand side, I'm just looking at profit bigger than zero, I will look at each row of data whether their particular profit is bigger than zero, yes or no. In this case, both will return a yes, but if the profit is smaller than zero, it will return a no, but just on the row level. And we can create some great visualizations, as you may notice. Instead of looking at the entire bar, I'm looking at, okay, I have some parts, some transactions in this case that I have negative profit, but some transactions have positive profit. How much is that? Or I'm having a good, profitable machines is profitable overall, but parts of it is part of the transactions are not profitable. Actually, quite a large part. So maybe I should be worried. And it's the same for chairs. Actually, I should maybe be worried about chairs. So depending on what your actual question might be, you might use an aggregation in your calculated field, denoting that you want Tableau to actually aggregate the results before using the logic, or you're saying, you know what, Tableau, I want you to calculate this at the row level. For every row of data that I have, I want you to use this particular logic or this particular way of aggregating the results, or actually checking these results before we aggregate it into our visualization. So that's the biggest difference between using sum or any aggregation in your calculated field and not using any aggregation in your calculated field, and why there is such a big difference in your outcome, as you may have noticed, between either having an entire bar colored or just part of the bar colored, or when we're looking at that profit ratio, having an actual norma profit ratio using that aggregation in the field, or having a slightly, well, slightly and completely abnormal profit ratio when we're not aggregating in the field itself. So depending on your use case, you aggregate in the calculated field itself, or you're calculating at the row level. That's it for today about aggregations in calculated fields. Where do they actually happen, those aggregations in calculated fields? If you have any questions, the Q&A is open right now. If you do not have any further questions, oh, let me just, next week, we're going to talk about table calculations, the difference between direction and scope, and how we can learn more with a few simplest tricks, how we can see what the direction is and what the scope is. On the 30th, the last of the month, we're talking about partial drill down using actually parameter actions to create a partial drill down. And the first week of April, we're talking about some things that I wish I knew when I just started working with Tableau. I know them now. They're super useful, but I wish I knew them 4 years ago when I really got started with Tableau. For now, I want to thank you all for your attention. Um, Hope you enjoyed your short break and a little bit of knowledge about Tableau. So thank you all and have a great day if there are no further questions. I'll just stick around for a few minutes. Feel free to leave if you are done with this particular session. Thank you very much and I hope to see you next week.